You can go ahead. You can talk about where you know, just briefly, just say where you are
Okay.
from and where you met.
All right. Um, at the time that I met Daryl Lewis, we lived in Roberts, Idaho, and up on the in a big farm that my dad was running, and it was on the Arco, on the edge of the Arco Desert. That farm was, and that's where we lived. So in my dating career, and I had a
And
few.
she had plenty of it.
I I had these young men coming trailing clear up from wherever they lived, clear out there on that desert thing.
It was 3 miles out of town.
So anyway, I had a date with this young man named something Quinn.
John.
John Quinn, and his friend Daryl Lewis had a date with someone else, and they argued a little bit about this Geraldine Dally or Galley, and he claims that no, I was. You can tell that. I'll do it later. Anyway, so John came up and got me, and he had his date, and we went out on this date, and all the time that we were together as a couple, this is how I recall it anyway. We'd always play the hit parade and the latest music and sing along with it. And Daryl,
They don't know what hit parade means.
I know, he was sitting in the back seat, and Quinn and I, not Quinn, John and I were sitting in the front seat. He was the driver. Well, Daryl and I started singing, and we would sing together these songs, and we just seemed to connect right then and there. And our dates probably thought, "Oh, thanks a lot," because we were just attracted to each other, and we'd sing these songs. And I thought he was so handsome, and I thought he sang like Bing Crosby. That thrilled you in this day.
And she doesn't drink.
Anyway, that's how I met him.
Dad, why don't you tell your version?
Well, yeah. She and a contingent of Roberts High School came to our school to sing on a program, and I was the student body president, so I got to announce the program and introduce them, and that's when I first became aware of her, the first time I'd seen her. But we still didn't meet that day, but I'd heard about her through John Quinn. And I knew a girl in Rigby. Her name was Geraldine Galley. And so when he started talking about Geraldine Dally, I thought he was mistaken in pronouncing it wrong, and I kept correcting him. I said, no, it's not Dally, it's Galley. And we finally had to look it up and go meet this gal from Rigby, and I think I went with her once or twice, if I recall. But we discovered that there was a Dally and a Galley. And but I was impressed with your mother. Like she said, we had fun singing, and we had more fun on our date with them, with each other, than we did with our dates. So it wasn't long until I called her up and asked her. But you have to remember, maybe you don't need to remember, I mean to tell you that she lived out on the desert, at least 3 miles past Roberts. There were no phones out there. And so the only way I had of getting a hold of her was either going there and looking her up, or calling Grandma and Grandpa Dally, who lived in Roberts, and said, would you get a message to Geraldine? So it was not easy to get a hold of her. But I always managed to get a hold of her when I wanted to. I'm not quite sure what else to bring out at this point.
That's when
Talk
we met.
about. So, okay. So talk about the first date.
I really don't remember the first date, but I remember that I had made up my mind that I wanted to marry her.
We're not there yet. There's some dates to go yet.
You tell about the dates.
I always loved going out with this Daryl. I don't know what it was about the attraction of that kid, but maybe because he wore his high school sweater. His, he's, what do you call it?
Letterman sweater.
Letterman sweater. Anyway,
Well, we used to go to Idaho Falls every weekend. They had dances at the Tabernacle in Idaho Falls. It was really a nice place to go. And they required shirt and ties. I remember that. And that's where we would go down there every weekend and dance. And then afterwards, we'd always go to some place and get a hamburger or something before we went home. But most of our dates was dancing and going to movies, right?
yeah, it seemed like it. Sometimes we'd get together at somebody's place, but and then
We didn't hang out in those days. We were serious about dating. A date was a date.
it had a purpose in it. But anyway, this one time he took me home and we were sitting there in front of our house and we were just talking. I was looking at him and he went like this and pulled his comb out and started combing my hair and combing my
She had bangs, and I like to comb those bangs.
We were
And then I said to her one
close.
time, I said, Jerry, you got something in your eye. Let me get it out. She shut her eyes, and I kissed her.
Wasn't that sweet? Anyway, now you can tell about the other.
What other?
I don't know. You said,
Decision time.
it was a little breakup in our relationship.
Well,
after
yeah,
a
we had
while.
about a 3-month period where I didn't go back and didn't date her for about 3 months. And do you want to tell about the play that your dad put on?
Anyway, and we would see each other at those dances. He'd be with another girl, made me so jealous, and he'll probably never say it made him jealous, but it did me. And but I was with another guy, probably had a different one every time I went. But anyway, so my dad was the state drama director, and he had a play going on, and it was going to be in his ward, and it would
Our
play,
ward,
yeah,
not your dad's ward.
right, in his ward, and and he and it ran 3 nights in a row. So I went with my dad all 3 nights and took tickets. And
Why did you do that?
why do you think I did that? The first night, all right. Second night, still no Daryl. Didn't expect him to come the third night either, but there he did. He walked in. He had his mother and dad. Was your
My
dad
sister,
there?
Maygene, was with me.
Okay. And Ray.
Well, Ray and Betty came separate.
Okay. And so I was pretty clever. We just said hello very cordially, and he went in with them, and they were seated, and when it was about ready to start, I went in, got a folding chair, went over and plunked it down right by him. He was on the aisle, thank goodness. And I plunked that chair down and sat down, and you can tell the rest of the story.
Well, I heard this chair plop on the floor, and I turned and looked, and it was her. And
You did get him, didn't you? Anyway, I guess that did give him a thrill. I'm sure glad. Because I knew what I wanted in that guy. Anyway, so if he would quit being emotional, he could tell the rest of the story. This is where his brother had to come in on the scene. He was too young. He was still
Yeah,
only 19.
I didn't know love from like. Ray said, you need to take her home. I said, Ray, I'm driven mother. I need to take her. And he said, hell, I'll take her home.
He couldn't even figure that out.
Yeah, I had to be told. So I took her home that night, and we started dating again. And then it started getting pretty serious, and
Ray had to tell you though that he had to ask you a question.
we were in Roberts one night, and I had her in Idaho Falls one night to dance, and Ray and Betty were there. And Ray says, Daryl, do you love her? I said, I don't know. I don't know what love is. Well, do you like her? Yeah. Do you like her a lot? Yeah. Well, then you love her. And he says, you better do something about it.
We quit dating all the other people we were dating, so Isn't that life?
So this was in the fall of the year because I remember we were out picking up potatoes at Lyle's place, Lyle Scott's place, and I was on the wagon lifting the sacks. They would what they called buck sacks, and the sacks were where the pickers would set them along in a row, and these all had about 60 pounds of potatoes in them. And they were on both sides of the wagon. The wagon drive down through the middle, and they'd lift somebody, a guy, usually a man, would lift the sack up, put it on the wagon. I would take it and situate it on the wagon, lay them down 4 across. So that was my job. And while I was up there, I heard these girls talking. These girls that were in the field picking potatoes were all my friends. We went to high school together, and I heard one say, she's really pulling a fast one on Daryl. She's got this missionary coming home pretty quick, and they've already promised each other they're going to get married, and she's just playing Daryl for a sucker. She just, and I thought, I'm going to find out. So I had a date that weekend, Friday, and I'm going to find out if she's just putting me on. So we got down there. We went to Rexburg that night to a movie, and on the way back, we went to her grandparents' place because it was quite a ways out in the field where Jerry lived, and she had stayed there overnight, and then the parents would come in the morning and pick her up and take her home. Anyway, I thought I'm gonna ask her, so I said, Jerry, I want to go steady with you. Will you go steady with me? And I said, now remember, when you go steady, that means that you'll be married soon. The next step is marriage. And she said, well, I'll have to think about it. So about 10 minutes later, she said yes. She thought about it for 10 minutes.
Well, I knew, but I just thought he needs to have some time to wait. 10 minutes. Oh, brother.
Well, that boy that the girls mentioned was coming home from mission came home. It was probably a month or so later. And
Should I tell about him first?
Go ahead.
I went with Bill, and his name is Bill Jenks. He's a really nice boy, really good boy.
I think this was Bill Love. No, it was
Bill
Jinx.
Jenks.
Okay.
Bill Love was never anything. Anyway, and I went with Bill, and he really did I liked him, but not really. Not like Daryl when I met him, but but he must have, because he did want me to wait for him, and I said, well, I can't tell you that one way.
He made a record. He did a lot of
I'm
singing.
going to tell about that. Anyway, he went. I don't even remember where he went on his mission, but he sent me a record, and because he sent me that record, the folks were all into it and excited, and they went and bought a record player so we could play it because we didn't have one. And he wrote this song, and all I can remember of it is, "Wait for me, my darling, please wait for me. Can't you see?" That's it.
Did you write it? With you in mind?
He did. This
Yeah,
guy,
he wrote
he
it
had
for her.
another guy actually wrote it that knew how to do music, write music, but he put the words in it. So he sent it. And oh my gosh, then I was all in love and thought he was so wonderful, and I couldn't wait for him to come home and the whole thing. In the meantime,
Now it's my turn.
Buddy came along.
One night we went on a date, and this Bill Jinx had not been home too long. And we had agreed we were going to go steady, and she announces to me that she would like to go out with him. And that ticked me off. And I said, Jerry, you promised we'd go steady. I know, but he just come home and he wants me to go out with him, and okay, all right.
He was so stubborn. He didn't try hard enough.
So
If it weren't for me, wouldn't have happened.
I said, go ahead. So we had another date, and we'd always make a date we were on a date on Friday, we'd make it for the next Friday, because as I said, she had no phone. We didn't have a phone either. I'd have to go walk to the cold storage plant, you remember that? A block?
No, they're too young. They weren't in on
Anyway, I'd
anyway.
walk over there and use the telephone, And anyway, we had a date for the next Friday night, and I thought, oh, we'll give her this week, and I'm going to go back down to her this next Friday, and if she wants to go out with him, that's it. I'm through. So
He never would.
I got her in the
fight
car,
for me. I
and
shouldn't have
instead of
married
heading,
him.
as we came out from the farm, you come to the main road going through to either Salmon, Idaho, or Butte, Montana, or Idaho Falls. Turn right. Well, I turned left and headed out towards Mud Lake and that way. And I thought, I am not going to take her to Idaho Falls. If she's going to go out with this guy, I'm going to take her home right now. I'm not going to spend another dime on her. So we headed out of town. We started talking.
Baby.
You tell it now.
He really was. He didn't fight for me, and I think I should have held my ground. But anyway, so Bill, it was just at Mutual. He just took me home. That's all we were going to do. I think I even told him that, but he didn't believe it. So he took me home so that we could talk. After all, he wrote me a song, and was hoping I was going to be there when he got home. So we had a nice visit and so forth, and I told him that I loved Daryl and that we would probably get married. And so we ended right there and just shook hands, and I went in the house, and that was the end of that. Nothing to it, but I should have made it harder on Daryl. I should have. I never thought. I thought if I didn't, though, he would just drop me and go with Geraldine Galley or something.
Well, when we headed south or north towards Mud Lake, we got out of town just a little ways, and I asked her. I said, "Okay, what's the deal? Are you going to go with him or not?" And she's, "Nope. I told him that I was going to stay with you." And I, yee-hoo! So I turned the car around. We went down the falls.
Oh, man.
Our dating resumed, and we got married the 5th of September of 1950. And
Excuse me, but 1 month before I turned 18. And they had to sign for me. How weird of us. Now that we think it was our mature thoughts.
well, we had already talked about what about a mission? Because I expected that they would ask me to go on a mission, because in those days there was only one missionary allotted for each ward because of the Korean War. And I was eligible to go on that mission and meet the quota for the ward. And so we decided that if we go ahead and get married, but if they did ask me to go, that I would go. I would accept the call. And that's what happened. Toughest thing we ever did.
But very much needed. He needed to go and grow up and learn to be a leader. And I needed to grow up for sure and work and get out of, my little cocoon.
So what did you do back home?
So, well, I actually lived with my folks. Started out with my grandparents in Ogden, but that didn't work out well. Another story in itself. But lived with Grandma and Grandpa because they had moved from Roberts back down to Dayton, where he ran a church farm. And so I lived with them and worked in a 5 and dime store over, it's called King's, over in Preston. And first time I'd ever worked like that. Anything I ever did to earn money was babysit or pick up potatoes. And so this was a whole new experience. And for many, many reasons, that mission was a great blessing to both of us. But getting married was too, because I'm not sure I would have waited. I don't know if I would have. I was young. And so my part of it is that as hard as it was, and it was very hard, my bishop, he suggested that I go to the dances, that I live my life, not just stay home and be a poor old maid or whatever I was at the time. And so I would, and I'd dance with guys. I danced with returned missionaries. I don't think they would even suggest you do that nowadays, do you? But he did at that time. And But I was true blue. It was all right, and he knew I would be. So, so on my part of it, that's what we did. But what saved my life, because there had to be more to, I couldn't date or anything. And so my two sisters and I, Margaret and Elaine and I, formed this trio that Mother always had us doing anyway when we were young. And Aunt Lucetta was our piano player. And we got to singing everywhere. We'd sing in church functions, we'd sing in weddings, we'd sing any little thing. People would call us and actually put us on their calendar. We even sang at men's groups like
Kiwanis, the Lions clubs.
those kind of things. We'd sing at that, and it was just really a good thing. We were really glad that we had that opportunity. Anyway, so so that's how I spent the time, and we'll stop that for right now.
Do I vibrate on that thing? We're done with the mission. Dad came home, or you're coming home, or do you want to just start from your now back from your mission?
Yeah, that was just most exciting thing, because he came home on the bus from that far on the bus, and I just was so excited to get that husband home, and he was too, I guess. I'll let you say whether you were or not, but anyway. And we were in Salt Lake. We stayed with his sister, and his mother and dad came up, and I think all the others were there, weren't they?
Fern and Lyle was there.
I didn't know if May Jean was.
Mom and Dad came to Salt Lake to see me get off the bus. And we stayed in the motel that night. And they stayed with Lyle and, Keith and LeVay. And then we went the next day and had dinner with everybody. And
Grandma couldn't figure out why we'd want to stay in a motel. Why didn't we there with them? I thought, that was a long time to wait for him to come home. We didn't tell him that because we were too embarrassed, but Anyway.
our second honeymoon was much better than the first one.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that fridge. Okay, anyway.
Okay, well, so,
We went to Idaho. Their folks lived in Dayton. We stayed with them just, I think, one day. And maybe two. And then we went to Idaho Falls because got a phone call from Daley Hendricks, my brother-in-law, saying that if I wanted to go to work at Pacific Fruit and Produce, they had an opening. They're people that deliver produce to the restaurants and stores and so on. And so we rushed up there because I had applied in Preston several places for jobs, couldn't find a job. And I got panicky after you spent 3 or 4 days looking for a job and couldn't find one. I thought, wow. Anyway, we went to Idaho Falls, and I got the job with Pacific Fruit and Produce. It was one of those jobs where you don't want.
Sorry. Keep going.
This is just disturbing us right now.
It's tradition for me to be the one to ruin everything.
Do you guys want to stop right there?
yes,
People
I
Yeah,
think
we
it'd be
better
better because we gotta get things straight.